You are listening to Modern Retrospect, retro hits and modern bits. I am Yovan.
And I'm Joseph. Sometimes there are just too many games to look forward to, so this time we'll be discussing our most anticipated upcoming games. We will each have 5 that we get to dive into, so get ready to hear some all-around fanboying.
If you like what you have been listening to so far, subscribe, rate us, or leave a message if you are feeling extra generous.
Alright, let's jump right in. Now, just real quick to start this off, I am not allowed to talk about any Ratchet & Clank, Final Fantasy VII Remake, or Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, only for the reason that I have pretty much done that to death over the past ones that we've done, so I will leave that for other episodes.
You've reached your quota on those games.
Yes, definitely. We're going to be moving on to things a little closer to home, and maybe things that people haven't heard of, but we'll get right into it. So, Yvonne, this year being as packed as it is, what is the first game on your list that has you just counting the days?
Okay, so I tried doing something different, kind of just like you. So I wanted to keep it a little more interesting, so I didn't pick some of the obvious picks for me, right? There's some stuff in there that might interest, say you or other people, but I picked it because it wasn't something I would have put on the list, even though it's kind of like a popular choice. But this first one, it's a little... it's coming from left field a little bit. It's the Famicom Detective Club games. There's 2 games, right?
I remember when we talked a bit about this, but it's still one of those games where I'm a little like,
yeah, I believe we brought it up on the Nintendo episode a little bit, or if we didn't, then shame on us. But this is one that really stood out on the Nintendo Direct. And there's 2 games. I'll be honest, I didn't know a whole lot about these. Maybe a YouTuber or something mentioned it in the past, and I kind of thought to myself, hey, that's pretty interesting, but I didn't know much about it. So but there were 2 games that came out for the Famicom Disk System. The first one, I believe, is The Girl That Stands Behind and The Missing Heir. These 2 games, as stated earlier, came out on the Famicom Disk System, and they're kind of like, what would you say the gameplay is? Kind of like text-based.
I think they usually call them like a visual novel type games.
Yeah, kind of like from what I saw, it looked like you could explore mysteries, and it's text-based commands. I saw a bunch of locations you could explore, and you could do the whole examine, kind of like click adventures, right? You could examine items, interrogate game characters, and they went ahead and obviously updated it with modern graphics, voice acting, which I'm really excited for,
yeah,
right?
It's
not often
really
Nintendo
nice,
does
very
voice acting.
clean. Like they basically just redrew everything.
Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of funny because you would think these are kind of right up your alley since you really love the Phoenix Wright games.
That's true, actually. I mean, they did pique my interest. I have them on my wish list, but it's one of those things of like, will I feel dedicated like when it comes out?
Yeah, what I wish they would do, I'm not sure if they will. In fact, I don't think they will, but I wish they would add the 2 original Famicom games. Now, the reason I don't think they'll do it is because they would have to go back to the original ROMs and retranslate them and update them. Kind of what they did for Fire Emblem, the Japanese exclusive Fire Emblem for the NES, or I'm sorry, for the Famicom that they released on the eShop. I wish they would do that to the original games and re-release them alongside these games, kind of like as bonuses. That would be really cool.
It probably would. It's one of those things of the whole how much time do they want to dedicate to it. I mean, it's interesting because I think the hook for them is probably that they're not very like popular and they were never brought to the West. So they're like, if we give it a nice coat of paint and make it feel fresh, then people are going to go for it more. And I think it's kind of working because it did catch my eye like enough for me to go, well, that's interesting because I've never heard of it.
And I think Nintendo really needs to do more stuff like this because I'm a huge fan, obviously, of Nintendo, and I would pay money for this stuff. I do want to give them my money, so like this, these Famicom stuff and like the Fire Emblem game, stuff like that, they translated Earthbound Beginnings back in the Wii era. That was an NES game or a Famicom game that never came here to the West. Stuff like that. They need to do more because what happens, Joseph, is that they're not doing it. So guess what? I go out and look for it, right? So
yeah, I knew you told me about your expeditions to find those things.
Everdrives.
Is that what makes you excited about this game though? Because it's like one of those niche games that you would probably like talk about or get into because it's one of those
Yeah, it's just
type of
it's
retro.
just history. It's just a piece of history, right? A piece of Nintendo history that we never got. And it's funny because Nintendo's not a company that learns their lesson, right? They came out with Mars and Roy back in the Smash Brothers Melee era. And guess what? That was hugely successful because then that gave them the confidence to bring over Fire Emblem to the West, and now that's one of their biggest franchises right now.
Yeah, I mean it did have a small tumble for a little while.
Well,
Well, I wouldn't say tumble, but it
tumble
was
not
lacking
as
in
far.
sales technically.
Yes, you're right, but not tumble as far as quality because those GBA games and the GameCube and Wii games were pure fire. No pun intended. But regardless, they invested in the franchise and eventually it paid off, right? So I just wish they would invest in more of their franchise and bring over more, trust their Western audiences more with this kind of stuff.
Well, I think that's what's actually happening. I think with this, I mean, it's not the first time they've done this. I feel they are slowly over time using it as a way to bring more interest on these either older ones or different types of gameplay styles that have actually become a little more mainstream. So they're like, oh, this has a market now. Like, might as well.
Yeah, you're right. And I'm actually glad they kept the name, the Famicom Detective Club. That's such a cool name. The Famicom name is such a cool name. I really love it. Now, obviously, I have a soft spot for the NES. Not the NES or not the SNES, but the NES and the Super NES. I want to make that clear because I've heard a bunch of NESs and SNESs lately and it bugs the hell out of me. So it's the NES and Super NES. Okay, just want to make that clear.
I say it that way. So
actually, not you. Just saying. Yeah, it's just all right. Got that out of my chest.
We're actually going from Famicom straight to PS5. So for my first game, it's coming out very shortly. Kind of like how yours is actually coming out in May. Mine's coming out in April, like just the end of April. So Returnal, which we did talk a bit about on the Sony Outlook, and I've had it does. I've had my eye on it ever since it was announced, and it is done by House Marquee. It looks beautiful. I could tell that when they were showing it off in its gameplay that it looked like it's hitting 60, but that it struggles, and I'm wondering if that's why it was delayed because they wanted to iron that out. I just have to say that it not only for me is it a cool concept. It looks like it's utilizing full assets and utilizing the hardware completely of the PS5. It looks amazing. I'm a huge roguelite fan, and it looks like this is their type of game doing it. But I'm wondering, I'm actually really curious. Hades came out, and it stole the whole roguelite not stole, but like it revitalized it in such a way that people started considering it like the new standard.
That studio is something else, right? They could do any almost genre and really knock it out of the park.
Yeah, they've experimented a lot with it, and I get this feeling like if Hades just recently took it where people are like considering it a new standard, I'm almost wondering like, will Returnal actually like upend it quickly? And I get this feeling because it's a AAA game in full 3D, right? And we're talking huge, expansive exploratory areas, next-gen graphics and performance. And trying to give you this whole new concept of also very story-based, like Hades, where the lady, she's stuck in a time loop on this planet, she keeps reliving it, but things keep changing, she's reliving her memories as you're collecting all this weird alien hardware and fighting these really outlandish alien creatures, which I love how, there's sometimes I don't like how some games, when they make aliens, they're a little too generic. Yeah. And this just looks like they're going full-blown, like, this is an alien world, and I love it. And so for me, that's actually, like, my big upcoming anticipated game that's coming out pretty quickly, and I'm excited for it. I'm super another game to truly show, my PS5, like, hey, come on, give me that exclusivity I've been looking for.
Well, you know what? Maybe I should use my PS5, the one that you so generously procured for me, and maybe try out Returnal. right? So hey, I mean,
go right for it, man.
Yeah, I mean that I feel bad because I kind of vented on that Sony episode, but everything's good now. I'm all good.
I know you're like, I'm good. I'm fine.
I'm good.
So, I mean, speaking of PS5, I mean, you have something that you're finally gonna get around to playing.
Yes. Okay, so let me give some background here, right? So I got Final Fantasy VII during Black Friday, I believe. Do you remember I texted you? It was like at 2 in the morning or whatever.
It was cheap. It was
like 2-3 in the morning. Yeah, and I got the notification, the IGN tweet of all things that said, "Hey, Final Fantasy VII is like $14 on that Best Buy." So I jumped on it, I got it, and I've only played about an hour or two of it, really.
Shameful.
And I'm actually glad that I only played about an hour or two, because then they introduced the Final Fantasy VII Intergrade during the Sony State of Play. So, very fortunate for me that I could just go ahead and wait until June, right? When does it come out? June the 10th?
Yes.
And, they're adding, and again, not to kind of retread, old ground, because we talked about this during the Sony episode, but they're adding the visual optimizations, the new story content, lighting, texture, environments, improvements, so on and so forth, 4K, 60 frames, etc. But what I'm excited for is that, one, they're adding was it Yuffie? Is that her? Yuffie
yes.
Infiltration, Midgar kind of DLC, story DLC. So I'm excited. You know what I feel like? I feel like people who missed out on Xenoblade on Wii, but then it's okay because they got to play the Xenoblade Switch edition, with better graphics and a side story added. This kind of feels like that, doesn't it?
It kind of does, yeah. I think one was probably... Well, I definitely can't say one was easier to do than the other. One was pretty much like a pseudo remaster, but yet also a remake. It's kind of weird. Xenoblade Chronicles was like a remaster / remake. Some people like to make the joke that Final Fantasy VII Remake is basically Final Fantasy VII Remake, the remastered version. That's Intergrade is basically that. It's a remastered version of
for
the
sure.
remake.
And I was watching Digital Foundry had a video now. Digital Foundry's a YouTube channel that does all these analysis on graphics, etc. And they were doing an analysis on Final Fantasy VII Intergrade, and so they saw a lot of upgrades. Obviously, they could see textures look better and 4K at 60, etc. But they also noted that a lot of the scenes were less a graphical update and more so like an artistic choice or an artistic change. So maybe on the PS4, one scene took place during the day, but then on the PS5 it took place at sunset, and that changes the look of the game because of the lighting, etc. So
I don't think it's really going to be during day, during night. What I think actually is going to be is a similar thing that they did with the Spider-Man PS5 version, where it's a similar thing, right? So they upped the textures to 4K, they upped the resolution to 4K, and they gave a 60 FPS mode, right? So it's very similar actually. But
that's true.
Some people were annoyed because the lighting in Spider-Man PS4 is dynamic lighting, but in cutscenes it's baked lighting. So it's actually like they make the lighting for that scene, it stays that way. But in the Spider-Man PS5 it uses, ray tracing,
it keeps
but
the
also
dynamic
uses
lighting.
Yeah, but it keeps the dynamic lighting and it utilizes the ray tracing fully. Now, in some cases, because of the artistic, look of things, some people thought that some scenes artistically looked a little better on the PS4 one than the PS5, but it is kind of debatable. That's what I'm saying. It is debate of what you kind of prefer. Now, for Final Fantasy VII, I'm curious to see if they plan to utilize dynamic lighting where they set the lighting purposely to be that special, way that it's filtered, or not filtered. There's actually a better word for this. I know it's not dynamic. Dynamic is different.
Well, it doesn't really need dynamic. I mean, the original game.
But I feel like they might have set the light sources in Final Fantasy VII enough that even though it's utilizing real time, changes in lighting, I get the feeling that they're doing it to make it so that it still keeps an artistic choice, but there might be small differences.
Well, you know what? If I'm being honest, I care less about the graphical updates, which they're nice, I'm not gonna lie. But I do wish that they would take some of the time to maybe iron out some of the issues that they had with the original game. And I'm not saying the original game had these huge glaring issues, but, from what I've read and heard, there were some things here and there that could use, another look at. Specifically, maybe the ending seems to come up a lot. People say that the ending could be, it's a little controversial. I don't know, and I don't know if they could do anything about that.
I'll give you like a little. I'm not going to spoil it, but I'll give you a little info that based on the ending or any padding that is done, I kind of get the feeling that it was way too early to cut down on. And what I mean by cut down on what they consider controversial and what they consider padding is that it's almost like what you learn, what you find out, and you move it into the second part.
Yeah.
A game like Final Fantasy VII Remake, I don't know if cutting stuff like this early would be like.
So maybe that was maybe that wasn't a good example. I guess not necessarily the ending, but I also heard that there's some other BS, like especially towards the end where they make you. There's some grindy sections or some repetitive sections, stuff like that. But you know what? I don't know. I haven't played it. The point still stands. If they kind of go back and take a look at some of the stuff, I almost, and this goes for, Nintendo with Skyward Sword too. Like when they re-release these games, I do wish that they would just take another look at some stuff that didn't work and not just, update some of the graphics and then feed it right back to you. But anyways, excited for that game. I can't wait to play it. Hopefully I get to knock out some stuff from, between now and then and clear the decks as they say. To really invest myself in this game. So
yeah, I mean, I put that limit on me that I wasn't allowed to put it in my list because I could gush about it, how excited I am. But I mean,
I didn't notice.
I'm happy that it is part of your list because I'm like, good God, Yvonne, just play it.
Well, when
already.
you told me that you weren't going to add it to your list, I thought it would have been an interesting addition to my list because I don't gush about this game, right? It wasn't a game that
you'll gush about it as soon as you're done.
When I record that episode, I'll be gush. That's exactly what people want to hear.
When we talk about one day, I mean, you're gonna be like, oh, it was amazing, and
All right. So, I don't think people want to hear about us gushing anymore. That sounds kind of weird.
Well, I have a different tale to tell that is not Final Fantasy VII, and that would be Tales of Arise. That game has caught my eye ever since it was shown off. And I think it was showed off in like 2019. Could have been 2018, I do forget. But okay, it's by Bandai Namco Entertainment. And if you're not familiar with it, the Tales series is a long-running franchise. It's gone on for, like 2 decades now?
I'm actually glad you added this because I'm a huge Tales fan.
Yeah.
Right? I've been playing this series for a long time. Well, I'm not going to sit here and lie. Okay, so I played it on the GameCube.
No one will know.
No, well, yeah, but no, it's disingenuine. It is a long time because it's, what is it like? I don't know, 17 years now or whatever. But my first Tales game was Tales of Symphonia on the GameCube. And then I went back and played Tales of Abyss on the PS2. And then I've gone back and I played a lot more Tales games. So huge fan of this. I'm really glad you added it to the list.
Yeah, because the first game, I have not finished it, but the first game, it's funny, I've known the Tales games for a long time. Way back when it was they were showcasing Tales of the Abyss for 3DS. I almost got it, but I didn't. The other one was Tales of Vesperia, which was the first Tales game that I actually did buy, and it was on the Switch. It was on sale. And I haven't finished it yet, but I was really, really enjoying it. When it comes to RPGs, I have a thing where sometimes I get off and I don't get back for like a really long time. But I was really liking it, and I've always had a thing for keeping up with the Tales franchise, even though I didn't play them. But Tales of Arise, I feel like, okay, the art style, the way that they are finally, I guess you can say, taking the direction of the graphics and the look of the game in a much more, I guess you could say in a much more current-gen way. It looked beautiful when the first trailer came out. I loved the art style. The idea behind it was great. The combat looked amazing, and it's all utilizing the Unreal Engine. It's a fantasy sci-fi. I love those type of games, especially when they look like animes, and the combat looks great.
You know what's crazy? These Japanese studios moving to Unreal Engine, that's kind of crazy, true. Right? Because normally, like back in the day, in the PS3 and 360 era, that didn't really happen. Japanese studios really struggled a lot with next gen graphics, unless you were Capcom. But having Japanese studios adopt the Unreal Engine, which is kind of famous for that gritty look, which is unlike it's not what Japanese studios are known for normally. But it seems to be a flexible enough engine to where they're able to adopt their kind of anime style to it. So I'm excited. That's a good engine, and I'm really excited for this game.
Yeah, speaking of Unreal Engine real quick, I think it's just become to the point where it's become versatile enough that enough companies are learning how to use it, and it is one of the best engines out there. It's becoming so common to the point that I think Japanese studios are picking it up because it just probably makes their job a little easier to try to make these bigger games that have these assets that they're finally trying to move into some of the newer designs or inputs that actually people want to see. And I think it was a good choice. A lot of Japanese companies are doing it. I mean, Square Enix took forever to finally get into it, but when they did, I think they benefited big time, especially for Final Fantasy VII. So I'm really looking forward to that. Caught my eye. We have no release date yet. They said they're going to be giving us some big time information in the spring. So I bet you it's coming out this year. And probably sooner than we think.
Yeah, it looks cool.
So, my friend, you now have the floor. What's next?
Alrighty, so next up, No More Heroes 3. This is a game that I've been waiting for a long time, right? I'm a huge fan of No More Heroes 1, the Wii version, and I liked Part 2 a lot too. Not as much as Part 1. Part 1 really is my favorite. It's the more janky of the two. But there's something about it, almost like an indie song or an indie movie, something that's really rough, but that kind of roughness really adds to its charm, and it was just such a fun and delightful game, and it took advantage of the Wiimote really well. And like I said, the second one was great as well. So I've been waiting for the third one for a long time, and we never knew if they were gonna make it because the first two didn't sell like gangbusters. So it was always up in the air whether they were gonna release a part 3 or not. And Suda51 is kind of nuts anyway, so you never know what's going on with him. But first of all, Travis Touchdown, he's the protagonist of this game, right? And is that not the coolest name ever, Travis Touchdown?
It is a very catchy name. It's kind of like a superhero
come on.
name.
It's so cheesy, but so awesome, right? He is like, him and Bale have so much in common.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Bale is like the sexy badass, and Travis Touchdown is the cool, bumbling goofball,
Pretty much.
They have so much in common in a lot of ways, right? But kind of their own, also unique touch.
Very memorable characters, I think, just because of how oddball, yet just how, what's the word I'm looking for, how enthusiastic they are.
I mean, they're both cool in their own way, right? Bale's sexy but badass, and Travis Touchdown, like I said, he's a big dork, but then he'll slice you up with his beam sword, I think it's called. But what's kind of has me curious, although a little hesitant, is that the trailer, now that was a beautiful trailer. So the trailer debuted in a Nintendo Direct, I believe. Is that right?
It did, yeah.
Yeah, and it showed a bunch of aliens, and I mean, it was all over the place, right? It had to do with it was an animated trailer, and like an anime style trailer, and it was just insane with aliens, and I mean, I don't even remember half of the crap that went on in that trailer because it was just so nuts, but it was just so cool. It is just so No More Heroes and so Suda51 that how can you not be excited for this game? And it looks like they're throwing in a bunch of other gameplay stuff, like they're throwing a first-person horror game in there, kind of like some RPG stuff in there. I mean, they're really throwing the kitchen sink. And if you know Suda51, not everything sticks, but it's that kind of throw everything at the wall style that he has. It really makes unique experiences, and I can't wait for this game. What do you think?
Well, about No More Heroes 3, it's interesting because I've been following that franchise while not playing it. The first and second one, I remember seeing that they were like the cult classic games on the Wii. Like, they were highly rated, but they just weren't as known as well, and they just
not
gained
exactly
such
highly rated.
well, I'd say fine. They have a niche, but they're still actually, in regards to reviews, they actually what they call have a huge following that I would say rates it pretty decently.
A
but
dedicated
it's a cult
fan following.
Yeah, it's like a great cult classics. And when they got re-released on the eShop, the first two games, they actually scored some pretty high marks on there. And so I feel like them pushing No More Heroes 3, I feel like Nintendo saw the opportunity where they're like, hey, we had the first two on the Wii. Let's straight up get a hold of the third one and let's make it a big deal. It's the perfect time to get it because I feel... Do you notice the kind of gaming community has kind of gone that way where the niche stuff that didn't get as much attention is coming back with like full force with either new games or sequels, and then they somehow garner even more attention or reviews than before? Because I feel like Nintendo is kind of the biggest one on that. They are big on getting franchises that they know are in people's mind in the back of their heads and bringing them into the forefront. They get a lot of people excited. So, and I think the director's been teasing the hell out of this game by doing those funny things where it's like the game's playing behind him, but he's like talking about something else, and he didn't give us like trailers for like who knows how long. So it's kind of finally nice that it has a release date now.
No, for sure. Yeah. They haven't released a whole lot more info, so there's not a whole lot for me to say. Other than, hey man, it's Trevor Touchdown, it's No More Heroes 3s, and it's going to use the Joy-Cons in a similar way that the Wiimote was used, which is super exciting. So, yep, can't wait to play this game.
Well, after talking about No More Heroes and his story, technically there's a different type of story that I want to talk about. So...
Look at that segue.
So, Monster Hunter Stories. Now, the second one that they showed off at a very particular Nintendo Partner Direct last year, I didn't believe it was going to get a sequel. I thought Monster Hunter Stories at least was going to get like a remaster maybe, or a Switch edition, a port. I've been really hoping they would have done that, but by the looks of this, they're not. That does not mean that I am not excited for Monster Hunter Stories 2, Wings of Ruin. That game, because the first one, like, if you think about it, like No More Heroes, was considered to be decently rated, but it was good enough that it gained a huge fan following. And I remember loving it.
That was a beautiful 3DS game, wasn't it?
It really is. I played half of it to the point where, once again, RPGs for me ended up going away for a long time. But then the funny thing is then I went away for so long, I bought the iOS version, and it runs like at 90 frames, and it's really crystal clear, looks beautiful. I've been basically just replaying it on there, and it's a great game. It can be a bit slow to start. It can kind of feel a bit repetitive sometimes, but there's a lot in it. A lot of people compare it to being almost like better than Pokemon. Okay, and that's pretty big. Some people have said who've gotten tired of Pokemon actually like Monster Hunter Stories.
Them fighting words.
Yeah, and a lot of people say, yeah, I'm just saying, and they're saying Capcom just seems to be saying, you know what, people want this. Let's give them it. So they're releasing it on Switch and PC. It's releasing July 8th. It recently got release date. And I'm excited for it because not only does it look like it is highly improved in its graphical prowess, it looks gorgeous. It's like watching a really nice Studio Ghibli looking movie.
This is a good year to be a Monster Hunter fan, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. Especially with the release
right
of
now
Monster
you're
Hunter
playing Monster Hunter Rise, yeah, and from
Yeah.
everything that you're saying and the reviews, it just seems to be another,
Yeah, they've
hit
got
for
me
Capcom.
hooked. They've got me hooked. I mean, I'm looking forward to the the save data thing you get to carry over, and you get special awards if you get Monster Hunter Stories 2.
That's
and I
cool,
know it's
yeah.
releasing on PC, but I'm probably going to straight up get it for Switch. I mean, it looks so gorgeous, and the story looks like it's well done. It's fully voice acted. The first game kind of had like people saying like a different little language. It was like a made up language, but in like snippets, and it was dialogue. But you can tell they fully invested a lot of time into this, and it makes me very happy. Like, it means they know what people want. They're like, hey, there's this huge fan following of Monster Hunter Stories. Why don't we just get that in there? And it's something they haven't dabbled in enough. And I feel like with this game, they're trying to shine a huge spotlight, and I think they're looking at this like a whole other genre they're finally deciding to jump into and just go full force in. And you know what? More power to them. I am excited. A lot of people are excited, and I'm happy to see people excited. When I watched the YouTube trailer, and people are just so happy to have a sequel. It's actually a really good feeling. It's one of those games that I didn't expect to get a sequel, and everyone's just super happy about it.
Awesome. That's cool. Well, I don't have a pun or a segue for this next game, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and say, and it's not super original either, I guess, but that doesn't mean I'm not any less excited for it. And I'm talking about Halo Infinite.
It's a big one.
It is a big one. And, I want it to be kind of like a unique flower when building this list and kind of, say, hey, I'm cool, man. I'm going to put stuff that, whatever, who cares? I want this game. It had the controversy. Yeah, the graphics probably didn't scream like, holy crap, next gen is here, you mother effer, right? Like, you better, like, it's, we talked about it already to nauseum. Like, the graphics are kind of held back because it's also releasing on the Xbox One. The fan base got up in arms. I'm going to be honest, I had a pitchfork myself, but the developer delayed it, to their credit, and Microsoft also to their credit, and they're working on it. They're going to improve it. But now that I had some time to think about it, I was underwhelmed. I'm not going to lie. I was underwhelmed with the graphics, Joseph. But now that I've had time to kind of stew over it and think about it, I'm actually excited because I thought the Halo 5 and Halo 4 and Halo 5, yeah, they kind of look like Halo superficially, but it didn't really, really look like there was something missing. It's like the guy that does the Kermit voice right now. Yeah, he kind of sounds like Jim Henson, but there's something missing. He's not Jim Henson. You could, and if you're a fan, you could tell. And I know that's an odd analogy, but it's kind of, that's how I felt about Halo 4 and 5. There was just something missing in the style. It just wasn't Bungie. And this game really kind of gave me Bungie
So what you're
feels.
saying is they're trying to bounce back?
That's a good one. That's a good one. I have nothing clever to say here, so I'm going to move on. Yeah, it gave me a Bungie feel, so I don't know. Maybe the game was always destined to be here.
Yeah.
You missed that one.
Okay, no, I caught it at the very end. I'm like,
that's
God.
bad. Ooh,
that's going to be a hard one for people to figure out if they don't know about Bungie completely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it looks good. I mean, from what I've seen, if they're trying to improve, it looks like it's turning out to be much better. And I do know a lot of people, you're right, you included, are happy that it's looking closer to the original. It's a much more cleaner look. And I think maybe they felt they went off on a tangent a little too long, and they're trying to just kind of bring it back to its roots. I noticed a lot of developers are trying to do that these days, and I think it just sometimes they maybe feel like they need to settle back down and kind of look where they came from when they actually do this kind of thing. I mean, so far I think it works really well for most developers.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And, again, I don't know when this game is going to release, and I know...
Want to hear a rumor?
What happened? There's a rumor?
There's a rumor that one of the voice actors for... well, it's not a rumor, but one of the voice actors actually possibly leaked the date, and that it said it'd be out in November.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. For a big game...
Yeah, if you think about it, though, that's actually kind of... I wouldn't say it's sad, but isn't that crazy? Like, literally, it's supposed to launch in November, but it releases, like, next November. Oof. I mean, it's a time crunch, but hey, if it's a better game for it, I mean, I would hate for them to release a game that literally just soured
It's kind of weird because Microsoft needs games right now.
Yeah. And the
But at the
biggest
same
games like at
time,
the end
you
of the
know that
year.
old Miyamoto quote, and I'm gonna butcher it, but it kind of goes like, "A delayed game will eventually come out, but a bad game is bad forever." Something like to that effect.
Yeah, I think I heard something like that.
Yeah,
It's if you think about it, it's true. It's better that it's delayed than
yeah. If it
than
needs more
coming out
time in the
unfinished.
oven,
So
then you know what? Hey, and you know if you remember, Breath of the Wild was delayed about 2-3 times, and that seemed to work out okay, I
it
believe.
worked out more than okay. Good
Yeah, and
lord.
Breath of the Wild 2 also got. I'm not sure if it's been officially delayed. Maybe not. I could be
No,
wrong
I
about
don't
that.
think it's
Ni-
been delayed. They
Nintendo
actually
has been a
did
lot better about not giving a
yeah.
specific date until they
Yeah.
kind of know, right?
I mean, hell, they haven't
So
given us a date at all
I know.
yet either. So
I mean,
they've been really
look at Bayo 3, right? They don't even say anything
not a
yet.
single date. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yep. So that's mine.
Well, speaking of that, there's a special little game that I've been, thinking about lately. It doesn't actually look little at all, but it is Little Devil Inside. And that was a game shown off at the June presentation last year. And something about it just catches you. Like, the trailer is so well put together. The way
I
it
don't remember
showcases,
this
like,
one. What kind of
I
game is it? Like,
okay,
what's
so
the
what it
gameplay?
is it has a very angular art style, kind of like have you ever seen Kupo and the Seven Strings? Kupo
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
Something Strings? It kind of think of an art style like that. And it's very angular and very like smooth looking, like something you'd see in like some old kind of art project. And yet the characters are exaggerated, but yet it looks serious. Like, it has a serious feel to it, yet there's this subtle slapstick looking humor in spite of like terror. And it looks like you play like a guy who's hired by like some rich employer who, they show like the rich employer kind of going about his day, going to the store to get some coffee or eat some breakfast, and then him in a bathtub, or him like all these things. And while it shows the other guy, like he's like running through the desert, like being chased by some bandits or something, or some weird creatures. You see him like diving deep into this ocean area. You see him fighting monsters in a forest, and it looks so like the trailer sells you on it. And I've seen some gameplay for it, and it just looks like this game is meticulously crafted to have like you're a resource management. You collect things in these expansive world building areas, but then there are these small like areas that you can like dive into. You have all these different resources and weapons, and there's like set piece areas, and it's just they haven't given an exact release date yet for it, but I know it's supposed to arrive in 2020. It's from a company I've never heard of, NeoStream Interactive.
Yeah,
and it
same
just
here.
some people are saying it looks almost like Game of the Year material. I watched a little bit of gameplay footage for it, and it just looks so unique. I forget.
Wow.
A guy said it looks like a combination of like Dark Souls, Breath of the Wild. It has everything going for it. I'm saying anything going for it that you want to see in a game that's meant to just be super unique. So good for them. I'm very excited for that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna check this one out. I haven't heard of this game, and well, my memory is kind of iffy, so it could be that I saw it at some point last year, and it's a blur. But based on what you're saying, it sounds really interesting. I'm gonna go back and check it out.
Yeah, it's an odd title though. I don't understand why it's called Little Devil Inside.
Yeah, I like the name though.
Yeah, I don't understand why it's called that, but now it makes me super curious to find out like what happens in the story, why it would be called that.
my next and final game is Ys 9. Of course, this is the latest game in a long-running series, and the last game, Ys 8, came out for PS4 and for Switch. And I think the last... Now, excuse me if I butcher this, so I'm going to give it the old college try, right? Ys 8, Lacrimosa of Dana. Ooh. So, that game was awesome, Joseph. That game was really, really, really awesome. I absolutely loved it on the Switch. The localization was kind of iffy. It was kind of butchered at first, and they patched it up to make it better. And the Switch version had multiple patches to kind of improve it as well. But you know what? God, that was such a great Switch game to, just run around portably. And I had so much fun with that game. The characters were so lovable. They were stuck in an island. It had mystery, whatever. It's just such a great... I don't want to spoil it because I think you've said that at some point you want to play it, right?
Well, no, I've played a good chunk of it. I wouldn't say nearly enough. Nearly enough to technically, not nearly enough to technically know like all the story beats. But
I kind of held back. I didn't want to spoil anything. So,
but yeah, like you were mentioning the whole island that people were stranded on.
Yeah, but which is, I guess, it's a running theme with Ys games. In fact, I heard that in Ys 9,
they make fun of it.
They actually make a joke, like they actually make a joke where they somebody tells the main character, haven't you been kind of shipwrecked multiple times or whatever. So this is a new one in the long running series, and it came out for the PS4. It's actually out now, so I could buy it right now. But I want the Switch version. Yeah, it's gonna be downgraded graphically, but doesn't matter. These are awesome games for the Switch.
Yeah, very high quality. You can tell it's like they stay purposely behind on the graphical level to just focus on, whatever gameplay and story they want to do.
Yeah, it's typical kind of, these Japanese studios that are not Capcom. Their games are pretty modest graphically, but they focus on systems, right? Their whole thing is systems, story and their systems, gameplay and gameplay systems. Kind of like another series called is it Trials of Cold Steel, I believe, something like that. That's a super system heavy game.
Legend of Heroes: Trials of Cold Steel. It's like a long title.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So I'm playing the first one. I'm playing part 3 right now on the Switch, which is kind of blasphemous because I haven't played part 1 and 2, and these stories super connect. But from what I hear, they're eventually going to come out with part 2 and part 1 and 2 on the Switch. They're out now for the PS4, but it's okay. I'll go back and I'll replay 1 and 2, and then I have part 4 pre-ordered as well. Which I don't know why they do this. Like the company, I think their name is Falcom. They released Trials of Cold Steel 4, or is it 5? Yeah, it's 4. They released it on PS4 already, and they released Ys 9 on PS4 already, and then they're gonna release a Switch one months later. So I'm not a fan of that. I wish they would keep parity and release both titles at the same time. But the side effect is that it gives me more time to catch up with my current backlog before I get into like 100-hour RPG, right?
Yeah, those games are pretty lengthy when it comes to these
for sure.
games.
Now, what's kind of crazy is that Ys 9 is also coming out for Windows, for the PC. But it's crazy, but not so crazy because the Ys series has kind of like a history of coming out for PCs. The Falcom is pretty, out of a lot of Japanese companies, are pretty progressive as far as taking advantage of different avenues that traditionally Japanese companies have not taken advantage, right? So, super excited for this game. It's JRPG, and you know me, I'm a JRPG sucker. And
you want to take a stab at its new naming convention? You had Lacrimosa of Dana, and then you have Ys 9, and
no, I don't think I will, Joseph. I think I'm just
well, I will if you don't.
It's my brain locks up just with Ys 9. I mean, right? I have to think about not saying Ys 9. And that
I had a big problem with that too the first time I saw that thing. I was like, in itself
is taxing enough. Don't add that other bull to the end of it. So I'm just gonna stick with Ys 8 and Ys 9, and any other crap that they want to add on to afterwards, forget about it.
For all people listening, it is actually Monstrum Nox.
Monstrum Nox. Oh yeah, it just rolls off the tongue, right?
I know.
Woo! They're making Square Enix blush right now.
I know they're like we have the best.
Square
kind
Enix
of,
is like, wait a minute, we
titles.
have a monopoly on bullshit names. So, all right, cool. Yeah, that's it for me, man.
Well, speaking of fantasy-like games, I've got my final one to deal with, and it is a game that has been delayed so many times now, and I've been really hoping to see it like come out at some point, and now it's supposedly saying it's going to come out in 2022, and that is Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. I mean, you can't make these titles up. So,
well, you can,
well,
but
yes.
you have to be heavily sedated.
So it's a long time delayed game. It was shown off in 2017. Okay, that's a long time. So we're talking
help
like
from Platinum Games. Oh, that's interesting.
it did have help with Platinum
Wow.
Games. I think they were the first ones to make progress in the game on the combat system.
Yeah.
Which actually I get a sneaky suspicion that some of the progress they did on it was actually in a small way connected to the game that that got canceled, which was Scalebound. I really was interested in that game, I have to say. I really was. But you can tell that the combat system has a very fast fighting style, but it is more Japanese RPG kind of. I would almost compare it to Tales of Vesperia, or even other games going after that, like Tales of Bestiaria. But it does look
not turn-based, but kind of like
it's fast
RPG.
action. Yeah, it's fast action, and you have combos, but it's a lot more visceral. I mean, I've seen gameplay videos for Grand Blue Fantasy, which have slowly trickled out, where they'll actually have little sections where they show off either a trailer or a whole segment of gameplay. And let's just say it is gorgeous looking. It's gorgeous. It's running at 60 frames a second, which looks wonderful. And the combination, the way it's almost like if you took Monster Hunter, right? You take Monster Hunter, but you make it much faster. You throw in that JRPG flair and just, effects, and you add in like the fast fighting of Devil May Cry, and even a little bit of anime brawlers with a large expansive world and a high focus on story with lots of playable characters. And especially you can like play 4-player multiplayer, kind of like just like Monster Hunter. So it has a huge amount of potential. I think it's been delayed so long because they're trying to make it really, really good. And they've delayed games in the past. It's by Cygames, and they mostly focus on those Japanese RPG games, and I don't think they've ever made a game this large. I don't know enough about Cygames, but I don't recall ever hearing them make a game this big, and I'm just excited for it, because I've kind of got the thing, as you say, for the JRPGs, and this just looks right up my alley. Like, I would want to just sink time into this, or like play with people and enjoy the story, and you have all these different characters, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it looks gorgeous, man. I'm looking at it right now. So it's not a fighting game; it's an RPG.
Yeah, it's a Japanese RPG, and but as I said, imagine like playing Monster Hunter, except it's a Japanese RPG that has a huge emphasis on story. And for
it
me,
looks gorgeous.
It does.
I'm super excited for this. This looks great.
And it looks like it's running really well too. So I feel like, you know what, delayed as
Is
long
this coming out
as
for
they
Switch
like.
as well?
No, it's not. It's actually, they did say it is coming out for PS4, and I think they're just gonna have a PS5 version.
Oh, that's cool.
So I think it's one of those games where I don't know if enough people know about it, but I know a lot of people have been really like sad that it's still not out yet. But hey, if they get it to where, it comes out next year, and I hope it doesn't become irrelevant. It's too good looking, in my opinion, to become irrelevant.
Absolutely.
And there's still going to be a lot of PS4 games coming out that are, on the back burner, but they're just going to have PS5 variants.
Yeah.
So, I mean, why not? I mean, I feel like there's enough games to go around, and I feel like Grand Blue Fantasy might be like a nice game to maybe start 2022 with. So, I mean, for anyone who hasn't heard about it, I say check it out. You will not be disappointed.
I'm curious. So this is another great game. I mean, by the looks of it, it looks awesome. And one thing I've been thinking about is, I own a Series X and PS5, and you do as well, right? And we both own Switches, etc. So, last year, as messed up as the year was, a silver lining was that, we were home and we got to play a lot of games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, from what I see this year, and this is all good, I'm not saying this is bad, right? Again, last year, this was just a silver lining that we got to play all these games because we were stuck at home. So it was unfortunate that under these circumstances, the side effect was that we just got to play more games. And that in itself was good. But, but this year, it just seems like everybody's just bursting at the seams to get out and just, do stuff, right? So
yeah, it's like a lot of hype, but it's a little overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so let me ask you a question, right? And not to get too sidetracked, it's just one question. How do you think the effect of people not wanting to be at home anymore, right? So, some people have a little bit more money in their pocket. Probably jobs are going to rehire. They got their stimulus money maybe. And people are, like I said, they're just tired of being home. So they're going to want to go out. I know I'm going to want to go out. As soon as things get a little better, we're definitely going to start taking more trips if we can. So do you think this is really going to hurt the gaming industry? Like, last year they had a record year as far as sales, right? Do you think that's going to have the opposite effect this year?
I get what you're saying. I have a feeling that you might be right on that. A lot of people are going to be going out, but it's kind of funny. It's almost like compensation. So if you have a whole lot of people stuck at home, but then you had kind of a trickle of games coming out at a reasonable kind of pace, but it was kind of slow last year. So now this year, it's almost like there's a compensation now, right? So everybody is wanting to go out, but then you have everyone going out, but then you have all the developers pumping their games out, flooding the market now with the games that they didn't either get to release or that are now releasing now. So I feel like it's going to be compensation. You have a point that maybe sales will be lessened possibly this year. But then if you think about it, if you offset that with more games, then you might still get at least close enough to the sales. But I will say this, by holiday, they might just beat 2020 on holiday sales. Because I feel that everyone's in an excited mood, and by the holidays, all the companies are going to be booking to get a piece of the pie. So I feel like it's going to be a really good year for them. But then it's going to be compensated.
No, yeah, I think you're right. I think so. And it's going to be an interesting year, and hopefully things get much better. Who knows? I think that the economy is going to come roaring back because people are just going to want to go out. So what that means is people are going to spend more and then, so on and so forth, right? I could be totally wrong, but I think that, the economy is going to come back really strong, and hopefully that also means that the game industry benefits from it. But I guess it's more so on the time side, right? Like, are people just going to have time to play these games? I don't know, right? Or are people just going to are they going to want to be stuck at home and play these games? Not stuck at home, but, we've been stuck at home for a long time. So if you get a game that's like, an RPG, say a JRPG, and this JRPG is 60 hours or whatever, maybe some people would be like, forget that. I want to go out. I've been stuck at home a long time. So I could be overthinking, and it's just something that popped into my head, and I wanted to get your opinion on it.
Well, I'd say in the end, I just look to the fact that at least things are in a better state now. And I mean, hell, us talking about all these upcoming things we're excited about. I mean, it's
absolutely, yeah.
It's nicer to just be excited again. You feel better being excited again. So I'd say for just looking towards a better year, I'd say that's one upcoming thing to just be excited about.
Amen. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Modern Retrospect. We will be releasing new episodes every week on a variety of video game topics and game-specific episodes, along with some other surprises. We hope you stay tuned.
You can find us on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. If you enjoy our ramblings, please feel free to subscribe, rate us, or leave a message through email, social media, or voice so we can hear your feedback on today's topic. If you want more retro hits and modern bits, just hop on back. You have a good one.
Bye, everybody.